So great to be with you. I was in Friedenthal a couple of months, 2-3 months ago. There was a family ministries training, and there was attached a conference on human sexuality. I don't know if any of you were there, but this is my second time overall in Friedenthal, and it's always a joy to come and be with you as brothers and sisters. What I want to share with you in these talks is an appeal. It's not, when we talk about health, sometimes like our bad conscience is triggered. And that's not the intention of what I want to share with you these days. It's an appeal for you to be aware and to be mindful of your health and well-being, so that you as individual, not just as a worker, but as an individual, as a spouse, as a parent, whatever role you have, so that you can function optimally and enjoy life as much as possible. I think that for me, that's what the health message is about. God gave us life. He didn't just give us work. He didn't just put us in this world to produce, to fill some purpose. But God, He really gave us life so that we should enjoy it to the full. And that is what the holistic health message is about. And I know this morning, Tara Wincross, she talked with you about the spiritual dimension of health. I've been asked to talk about the other 3 major dimensions, starting with the mental health. Also going to talk about the social health, with a special emphasis on the relationships we're in, and then also talk about the physical health. But I'm not going to talk much about what you eat. I will, when we talk about physical health, I think the diet is important, but really, I think even more important probably is, do you sleep enough? Do you exercise? These things are as fundamental to our physical health as what we eat are. I want to start with an exercise, an awareness exercise. Are you aware of your current mental state of well-being? How often do you reflect about how am I actually feeling? How am I actually doing? For us to have and enjoy good health, to have well-being, it's important that we are sensitive to our mental states, to our physical states, and also we are sensitive, asking questions, wondering what's going on between us and other people. So to help us just reflect on this, like how are we doing mentally, I will use what's called a mental well-being scale, well-recognized Warwick Edinburgh Mental Health Well-being Scale. And it has these, I think it's 14 items. 14 or, yeah, there are 14 items. Dimensions, aspects of our mental well-being that is important for you to recognize, so that if you realize that on some of these things I am not doing that well, that you can reflect on what can I do to improve my life in these aspects. And these 14 dimensions, they are scored on a scale from none of the time to all of the time. And I doubt that any of you will be able to score full on all of these. I'm sorry, I was in Zambia 2 weeks ago and I caught something that has been a stubborn virus to get over, so I'm still coughing occasionally, but I'm doing pretty well. But it's not necessary, of course, to score full on this all the time, but if you see that on several aspects you're scoring towards the low end, it's important to recognize that and to consider, should I do something? You don't have to do something, you can just go on. It's your choice, we all have the freedom. But many of us, if we work on it ourselves, work on it together with our family, with our friends, colleagues, maybe even with professionals, then we may be able to improve the areas where we may be struggling. So, some of these points, I've been feeling optimistic about the future. It's important that we're able to have hope, positive expectations about what is ahead. I've been feeling useful. Do I feel that I'm making a difference in the world that I am, in my context, in my community? I've been feeling relaxed. Not that you have to feel relaxed all the time, but is that still the general baseline? At the end of the day, before you go to sleep, are you able to take time to slow down, to relax, to feel things are quite okay? Or is there stress? Are there worries that are dominating? I've been feeling interested in people. This is so important. We are created as social beings. I think the most fundamental thing about who we are as human beings is that we are social creatures. We are made for interaction, for community with others. And of course, it's an advantage if you're going to interact with other people that you actually have an interest and a desire to do so, and especially you as pastors. Are you able to maintain this interest, this desire, this curiosity about the people you meet, the people you work with, the people you work for? Energy, do you have energy to spare? Or are you working full speed until there's nothing left, until the battery is flat? And maybe even then, when it's flat, maybe you just try to keep going. Like if you have your computer or your phone, you know when the battery is drained, you don't get much of value out of it anymore. But still, many of us, we can live as if we can just keep going. But it's not really productive. Nothing of significant value is produced when you are flat, when you have run out of energy, when you don't have anything more really to give. Another aspect is I'm dealing with problems well. We all encounter challenges, problems. How do you navigate them? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you feel stressed? Do you feel this is more than I can deal with? Or do you feel, well, this is a challenge, let's work on it, let's figure out how we can solve this one? Do you have a positive direction through that? I've been thinking clearly, or do you feel, brother, that you easily become overwhelmed, that your thoughts become chaotic, that you struggle to see ahead? I've been feeling good about myself. This is not about narcissism. This is not about an inflated kind of self-importance. But it's important that we as human beings, we can have a feeling, well, I feel good about myself. I enjoy being myself. I enjoy being in the world as myself. That's important. I've been feeling close to other people. Again, absolutely fundamental to thrive and do well as a human being is that we need connection with other people, and we need connection with multiple people. In general, if you are married, if you have a spouse, you still need close people beyond that circle of marriage. You need several people. Do you have good friends? Talk about more about that tomorrow. Do you have people who support you? Do you have people you can talk with totally openly, without any filter, without any shame about whatever is going on in your life? I've been able to make up my mind about things, able to move forward. I've been feeling loved, appreciated. Also very important to do well mentally. I've been interested in new things, and I've been feeling cheerful, having an optimistic spirit. So I don't know your score on this. I know on some of these, at times I would score lower. And that's when it's time to take a self-assessment, an inventory of how do I live, how am I in the world right now, and what should I change, what should I work on. How are pastors doing? In general, if we look to the research, what is it like to be a pastor? And how, in general, are pastors and their mental health? There's been various studies going on. I'm just going to reference this from the Barna Group in the US. It's not a European study. I know as Europeans we like to have data from our own countries, and preferably for our own country, because we know that Germans are not like French. We know that Norwegians are not like Swedes. That's somehow how we like to think about things. But if you bear with me, I will share some American data, which I still think are relevant. They're indicating something about the challenges of being a pastor. So this report, a few years back, 2017, comprehensive studies of pastors across denominations. There's also been done studies. 2014, the North American division did a big study on pastors, similar kind of results, and there's also been done studies since. But here are some of the things that the Barna Group found. Said pastors are more likely than the average population to experience inadequacy about their work and calling. More likely than the average population to experience that they are inadequate in their work context or in regard to their calling, to feel emotional and mental exhaustion. I believe that being a pastor, being an Adventist pastor, in many ways may be one of the most challenging jobs one can have. There's so many factors, and I'll do a workshop, I think Thursday afternoon or morning, Thursday, at least sometime Thursday, on burnout. If you're interested, I will explain more about the vulnerability of a pastor. But there's high risk of being alone, very exposed in many ways. People have opinions about your work, many things that if you work in other contexts, you may not be that vulnerable and feel that kind of loneliness that you may experience as a pastor. And because of that, I think it's so important that we, both on an individual level, that we think about how can I build a support system around myself? How do I intentionally do things, create things, make a network around myself so that I can have the support I need? But also, we as an organization, it's so important also that we think about the system, the structure, and the support network that we create around our pastors. More than 1/3 of pastors are high or medium risk of burnout. That is a quite high number. Burnout is a significant challenge, an experience that many pastors at one point or another in their ministry experiences. And that's something that we need to take seriously. Burnout makes it very difficult to function. Burnout makes that your skills, the talents that you have, that is very difficult for them to be the blessing to others as they could be and they should be. Another challenge, they found that about 40% of pastors were medium to high risk on relational problems. Like in their personal, private lives, relational problems were a quite common challenge for pastors. Marriage, family context. And again, when you are such a public figure, when you have to be there available for others, but that when you back home are struggling, then that's a significant stress that is a challenge to deal with. Also found it interesting that most pastors didn't say that they were in the high-risk group for spiritual difficulties, but 60% defined themselves, scored that they were in the medium risk for spiritual difficulties. And that's also a major challenge when because a pastor is just a human being with a spiritual life like anyone else, and all of us, we have ups and downs. But when you as a pastor, when you struggle in some way or another spiritually, but you still have to go in front of the congregation, you have to do Bible studies, you have to present things that you may be struggling with even yourself in some way. Maybe not what you're talking about, maybe not what you're studying, but in some other area of life, you may be feeling that this is a challenge for me. And that's also where the discrepancy between what you feel inside and what you have to portray on the outside, that becomes a major stressor. And again, is a significant risk factor long-term for issues, for challenges. In this study, 76% of pastors said they knew some other pastor who had left ministry because of burnout in the last 5 years. Also interesting what they said, they found that very few pastors experienced worship in their local church as personally meaningful. Where does the pastor go for worship, for spiritual nourishment? Do you have a place? Your job is to nourish, to feed the flock. But where do you go? And I think you need a place beyond your study, beyond where you go for prayer, for reading the Bible, for your devotionals. You need some place also where you can be in community and worship as church and experience what you provide to your congregation. Nearly half of pastors report struggling with depression at some point in their ministry. And 1 in 5, 20% of pastors reported struggling with some kind of addiction and the most common one was pornography, sexual addiction. And what they found was that when churches are small, when attendance is declining, which I think fits quite a few churches that we have here in Europe, then that is where pastors often struggle more personally. I will just briefly talk about the two most common mental issues, mental disorders, that if you, we are going to come to the point at some point in our life, which statistically half of us, at some point in life, we will struggle so much mentally that we will qualify for a mental health diagnosis. Half of us. In the Western world, about 50% of the population, at some point in their lifetime, will qualify for a mental health diagnosis, which means when you qualify, when you have symptoms on the level that you qualify for a mental health diagnosis, then you should be in treatment. You should be getting professional help. It's not just enough then, usually, to just work on your lifestyle, work on your relationships, do these things yourself. You should probably be in treatment. Fortunately or unfortunately, there's a lot of people who don't get the help they need. And that's one of the important messages that I will beg you, whenever you recognize that you are struggling, that the symptoms don't go away, that you've been having these issues for weeks, for months, and that you're not really getting better, then seek professional help. Because just like it is for our physical health conditions, we know that there are good treatments for most of the physical health conditions that we know of. In the same way, it is for mental health. For basically all mental health conditions, there are good treatments. We cannot promise cure for every mental health conditions, but improvement is possible when you get the appropriate help for most mental health conditions. And I will just start with, I hope the video works and the sound. This is just some videos that we've been producing together with Hope Media Europe. They have designed these. They are soon ready to be released. So this is just like a pre-production. So you can see the sound is not quite right, but I'll still show them to you. So just showing this on depression and showing the other one, trying just to explain what is depression. And we have 5 other videos explaining what are the causes, what are the treatments, what can you do to help yourself. But this is just the overall what is depression, and we'll also show you the one on anxiety, what that is. See, do we have sound? If not, doesn't seem like we have sound on this.
But depression is much more than that.
Okay. I'll restart it.
What is depression? Depression means that something is pushed down. In depressive disorders, what is pushed down is our mood, interests, and energy. We may all feel sad and tired when bad things happen. That is normal. But depression is much more than that. In depression, we may feel sad, angry, and distressed about almost everything. Often, most of all, about ourselves, who we are, and life itself. We may lose interest in whatever used to give us joy and pleasure. We may feel exhausted and tired without having done anything. And even though we rest, we cannot recover strength and energy. Depression is a serious medical illness. It negatively affects how we think, feel, and act. It makes it difficult to work, love, and play. Depression is emotionally painful. Severe cases may be so painful that people give up on life. Depression is a leading cause of death by suicide. Many people everywhere around the world struggle with depression. Right now, almost 300 million people are suffering from some kind of depressive disorder. Depression affects all kinds of people, any gender, any age, any financial status, any religion, any race and ethnicity. Depression is so common that many of us will experience it at some point in life. All of us may know someone who is depressed, someone in our family, a friend, a neighbor,
a classmate,
a colleague. Unfortunately, many suffer from depression without telling anyone, without getting any help, some even without knowing it. Fortunately, depression can be helped. There are things you can do to recover, and there are many treatment options. We explore these in Reminded.
So that's the most common, or the second most common mental disorder, depression. And as I said, it's a leading cause of death by suicide, which unfortunately is a reality. People die because of mental health. And we become, through the pandemic, we become more aware of the challenges. And this is a problem around the world. It's not just a Western problem. I came just from Zambia a couple of weeks ago, and a major concern in an African country like that, also about suicide and people dying from that. Anxiety, which Charles Spurgeon said well, anxiety does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows, but only empties today of its strength. When we worry excessively about things which we at times may be prone to, may also be our personality, the way we are wired, the way we're built. Some may be more inclined to depression, others may be more inclined to anxiety kind of reactions. But these two mental disorders, like whatever mental disorder you have, often there's an element of depression and or anxiety in them. That's why I think it's important to understand something about them. So I'll show you also this video. This is with my voiceover, but in the end it will have a professional voiceover. If we get the sound again for this one.
War and...
Okay, I'll restart it.
What is anxiety? We live in a world surrounded by all kinds of dangers. We or someone we love may suffer or die because of illness, accidents, abuse and violence, disasters, war and conflict. For many, rejection and loneliness are the greatest fears and worries.
Feeling anxious is a normal and healthy response to stressful events.
Sometimes, however, we develop persistent and excessive fears and worries about potential or imagined dangers. Our brains can be quite creative in coming up with bad things that could happen. When persistent and excessive fears and worries become a burden and disrupt life, then we may be suffering from an anxiety disorder. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illnesses. It is estimated that about 300 million people around the world suffer from an anxiety disorder and need treatment for it. It is also estimated that 1 in 3 of us at some point in life will suffer from an anxiety disorder. All of us know someone who struggles with anxiety. It may be someone in our family, a friend, a neighbor, a classmate, a colleague. Anxiety disorders affect all kinds of people, any gender, any age, any financial status, any religion, any race and ethnicity. When normal everyday fears and worries are triggered, they may help us find solutions and protect ourselves. But when they become persistent and excessive, they may cause more pain than gain. They may take over and dominate our lives. Instead of helping us solve problems, they become the problem. They may become constant companions that hinder us from living our best possible lives. When this happens, it's time to seek help. Fortunately, there are many things you can do to help yourselves, and there are many treatment options. In the next video, we will explore the symptoms and various types of anxiety disorders.
I will skip through to how do we take care of our mental needs. Whenever, prevention, again, is better than cure. To live a life where you are aware, where you're sensitive about your inner state, how you are doing, how you are feeling, and making corrections, making adjustments, seeking help before things become major struggles. That is the best way to do it. But then when we come to the point where we realize I'm not functioning the way I used to do, I'm not enjoying life the way I used to do, I'm not as productive as I normally would be, then it's time to seek to go deeper into what the challenges are. And then it's important to try to understand what is the problem, what is going on. And then the question can be why am I struggling specifically? And then we need to discuss with ourselves, with professionals, what is in my biology? Am I more prone? Am I more at risk? Maybe in your family, it's common that people struggle with some kind of mental disorders. That might put you at risk. There's no determinism, though, in this. There's no one gene that causes anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, or whatever mental disorder it is. But there's multiple factors that play in. Is it something in my psychology, something in my history, something that has happened throughout my life, things about how I relate to the world, how I interact with the world? Are these factors that play a role? There are so many causes, and there's also not just one solution to all problems when it comes to mental health. It's complex as we are complex human beings. And that's why for each individual, and for me specifically, for you specifically, need to do some deep reflection and thought when we really realize we are struggling. What made me vulnerable to developing this mental distress? What was it that happened? Was there some trigger for what happened now? And is there anything now that maintains my mental distress, that makes it difficult for me to get out of it, makes it difficult, to blocks my recovery? Some of the things that we can do to help ourselves. And it's important, when you're struggling, you can't just take your body to a psychologist and then the psychologist will fix it. It's a collaboration. And there are many things that you can do for yourself. And it begins with acknowledging that you have to take and be in charge of your own life. Whatever struggle you are encountering in your life, in the world, you are the only person who can live your life. And that is a responsibility that sometimes it's unpleasant. We would wish that we could just outsource this, blame other people, expect other people to solve our problems. That's not how it works. I'm sorry. You have to live your own life. You have to engage in your own life. You have to take charge in your own life and be the director in your own life. It's also important to get to know yourself. How well do you know yourself? Have you taken time to get to know yourself on a deep level? Again, this is not always pleasant, because we all know when we get to know other people, there's some things we like, and there are sometimes things that we don't like. And usually when we get to know ourselves, we may find similar things, that there's some things that we're not too happy about. But then it's essential that we can develop, just like we are supposed to be compassionate and kind to other people, we also have to develop the ability to be kind and forgiving towards ourselves. What I've often recommended to patients was that they would write their autobiography, that they would sit down and write their own story from when they were born, whatever pops up. And it's amazing, like, to read those stories and the discoveries you make. Like, you have stories, all of us, we are living stories. But when you sit down and write it down, you will probably see other things than you've seen before. And if you are brave, let someone else read it. But I would say, regardless whether you are struggling or not, like, this would be one of the most important self-development, also professional development exercises that you could do. To actually sit down and write your story. You don't have to publish it anywhere. But for your own sake, and probably for the sake of those who are close to you, share it, read it. Then we have to face our own feelings, our own thoughts, acknowledge that they are there, explore what they mean, and not run away from them. It's important, self-help, to set boundaries, to practice moderation, and to live with a margin. Again, as you probably don't often do with your phone, you don't let it go to zero. You plug it in, you charge it when it gets to 10, 20%. In your own life also, live with this margin, that you don't push all the way until there's nothing left, but maintain a spare capacity in whatever you do. Again, what I said, be kind to yourself. And then the lifestyle principles, we'll talk more about them on Wednesday. But to exercise daily, very important for your mental health and resilience. Eat healthy, sleep, maybe one of the most important, maybe the most important health practice is to make sure you have enough sleep and that you have quality sleep. To take rest. I recommend, I think every pastor should have a day completely off during the week. And we know that day is not the Sabbath for most pastors. If you can have Sabbath on the Sabbath, great. If you can't, then have Sabbath on some other day, because you need it. and also your family needs it. I'm speaking from experience, son of a pastor who worked 24/7 and was, to be frank, quite absent when I grew up. And I think sadly sometimes pastors' kids, they get so sick and tired of the church because maybe sometimes they weren't nourished in the family the way they needed. And that is sad when that happens. Connect with others, practice compassion, kindness, and gratitude always, also to others. Help yourself by helping others, and live for something and someone. And I would stress the someone part, not just living for something. If you just live for something, you may become a dangerous person. Life is about people. And make sure that you live for people in whatever you do. We will end now in 3 minutes or less. A treatment for anxiety and for depression, it's similar. There are treatable disorders. Again, don't promise cure. Fortunately, for depression and anxiety, it is often possible. Sometimes it comes back. But treatment is effective, treatment works, and almost everyone responds positively, even though there may be vulnerabilities that remain. Treatment, counseling, psychotherapy, and medication, often there's synergies between them. There's no shame in medication, just like you would take medication for your body. You should also take medication for your mind when that is recommended. Sadly, many Christians and many Adventists, they are reluctant to get mental health care because they have the idea that, well, maybe the health professional will challenge my faith, my beliefs, they will attack my religion. If it's an up-to-date, modern therapist, they won't do that. They will respect the values you have. They may challenge them, they may ask questions, and that may be appropriate. But don't be reluctant to seek help because you want to guard your own faith, and when you see that also in your family or in your community, in the church, recommend people to get treatment, and the sooner treatment starts, the better. Psychotherapies, counseling, there are many traditions. There is no Christian tradition for psychotherapy. There's no one type of psychotherapy that works for all. It needs to be tailored to your needs, your situation. And sometimes I say seeking treatment, it's a bit like dating. You may have to try some different therapists before you find the one where there's a good match. That's actually how it often is. The match between the person, between you and the therapist is essential often for a successful course of the treatment. So, to sum up, most of us at some point in life, all of us will have some mental health issues at one point or another in the life. Half of us will be at the level where we ought to seek help, professional help, and get treatment, and do that. For your own sake, for your own well-being, for your own pleasure and enjoyment in life, and for the sake of your family, for the sake of your community, so that you can be fully what God has called you to be in this world. Thank you.